with grace, wisdom, and gentleness, I think will get you further than, telling them everything they're doing is wrong, because it's not wrong. There's a family behind that farm. There's a family behind the tractor, behind the chemicals, that is generational dependence on that farm and how they're running their operation.
He's making all things new. Where there once was fear, and where there once was shame, let a flood of joy break through. Let it overflow.
Guys, welcome back to another video, Drumheller Farms. And hey guys, I got something on my mind I want to talk to you about. Let's get this net fence wrapped up. Let's get to work. Guys, I got a good word for you today, all right? And something's been on my heart and I want to share it with you guys. It comes from Matthew 10:16, and it says, "Behold, I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. So be as wise as a serpent and as gentle as a dove." And he's telling them, I'm sending you in a world that doesn't really accept you. Okay? And they are going to push back on what you have to say. And that's something that I was talking to a friend today about regenerative agriculture who's just kind of getting started, and he's kind of been mentoring for me, and I was talking to him about who I've mentored from, and it just kind of brought to my attention today as I was thinking about our conversation later, that kind of reminds me of what we're doing here in this regenerative agriculture. We're gaining momentum. There's a lot more attraction to this style of farming, but I think we can learn a lot from that passage in our business, because I start thinking about it. Okay, we need to be wise as serpents, gentle as a dove. And when we're talking to people about what we're doing, and especially on social media, on YouTube, comments and different channels, you see it all the time, this way's the only way, my way's the best. And if people could just stop spreading commercial fertilizers and chemical inputs, they would make more money and the world would be a different place. But the reality to that is that we need to be wise when we're talking to people about regenerative agriculture. Okay, we need to make sure that we know the situation of that other farmer, right? Because to approach one of those farmers and say, hey, you need to quit spraying your fields with chemical inputs and commercial fertilizers, and not understanding the state of his ground and the kind of operation that he's running, what you're doing is you're going to back yourself into a corner that I can guarantee you, you are not going to be able to get yourself out. Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians, punching into midair and, hitting nothing. And that's really what you're going to be doing if you approach another farmer without some sort of wisdom on what his operation consists of. So, you need to educate yourself in the kind of farming that you're doing. But if you want to spread the word of regenerative agriculture and what we're doing and how much better this is for the land, for the animal, for our pocketbooks, you also need to be wise in the other ways of doing things, or you can actually make yourself look like a little bit of a fool. When you're approaching these people and talking about the kind of farming we're doing and you're trying to persuade them that there's a better way, you need to be gentle. And in that passage we read, you need to be gentle as a dove. And, you have to understand that this is the way that these people make their living, okay? And a lot of them, make a good living at it. Some of them struggle, but it's the only way that they know, right? And, a lot of those people are slaves to their industry. There's no real other way for them to make a living because they've kind of made the commitment to that style of farming, and it's very, very tough to get yourself out of that. So we need to make sure we're approaching these situations talking about the kind of agriculture that we're trying to promote. We need to make sure that we are approaching that with wisdom and gentleness. And as Ray Archuleta always says, one heart, one mind at a time. And that's my Ray Archuleta impression. But, you got to understand something, guys. When we first started out on this farm right here, we couldn't sustain 17 head of cattle, okay? 17 head of cattle we were feeding hay in August because we ran out of pasture. Currently, we are raising 120 head of grass-fed, grass-finished beef. This year, we have stockpiled an entire farm, and we probably will graze, hopefully, till about the first of the year. We're also raising 250 chickens per month on this farm. We're raising somewhere around 30 to 40 turkeys a month on this farm. We have a whole herd of pigs, all right, which we are raising about 25 pigs this year, and we're not even scratching the surface of how many more we can raise. And of course, as we are out here today, we're raising 16 head of a flock of sheep. And again, we're not even scratching the surface of what we can do with a flock of lambs. So approach these people with grace, and also give yourself some grace, because I brought my yardstick out here, okay? I just picked this up. I've been looking for a wooden yardstick all year to measure my grass. And again, approach yourself with some grace, because I can guarantee you guys, when I first started in this business, I did not have grass that's taller than my yardstick, okay? And I would say quite a bit taller than my yardstick. How does that look? That's pretty interesting to see. On August 29th is where we're at today. Something else that's really cool that I seen as I was walking through this pasture. Check this guy out. Really cool garden spider. This took some years of perfecting my grazing and also putting back into the land. So you're not going to see these results your first year. And, everybody wants this, prescription. How big does my acre size have to be? How often do I move them? I was speaking to my friend that's starting out today, and I said, you know, Parker, we have an advantage that a lot of people in our industry don't have, and that's that we don't have any experience. You know, we're figuring this out as we go along, and tough lessons are learned easier than lessons that aren't so tough, you know, and the bigger the mistake, sometimes the easier that lesson is to learn. And so find yourself a good farming mentor, someone that you can call and ask some questions. I think in your area is going to be your best bet in your region. When I say people are always looking for prescriptions on, you know, how to do this, how to do that, you know, they start following these people on YouTube, which, hey, speaking of which, hit that subscribe button, like the channel. We're trying to get the word out on regenerative agriculture, how much more profitable it is, how much less inputs it is, how much better it is for the land, for the animal. So speaking of which, hit that subscribe button. But we see these guys, and you guys all know, I'm not gonna name them by names, and you know, they have a heck of a following on regenerative agriculture, and we see what they're doing, and you see their success, and you think that's the only way to do it, right? That you have to move your cattle every 12 hours, and you have to do free choice minerals, and you have to do all these things that you see somebody doing. And the reality is, what you need to do is you need to get your butt out there and you need to do it for yourself on your own land, because until you do that, you're not gonna have that prescription. You're not gonna know exactly how big of a paddock to make, how often you have to move your sheep, how often you need to move your cattle, you know, how many chickens you can put in your crates. So just keep that in mind, guys, and give yourself some grace and give some people around you some grace. Now, I hope that was beneficial to some people out there. And now I gotta finish chores. This section here that I just put up for the sheep, it's about a 10-day section. I've got it divided into 3, and basically I'm moving, you know, every 4 days in one paddock and every 3 in the other. So, because this front paddock's always a little bigger the way my fences are set up. Let's go do some cattle chores. I still got pigs to do. I've already done chickens, and come along with me. I appreciate you watching the video. Let's go. Look at the birds, guys. Look at all of them. Guys, that's what's gonna change. One heart, one mind at a time. Seeing that symbiotic relationship between these cattle and those birds. You know, no, we don't use chemical porons on our cattle. No, we don't put stuff in their minerals that kills the fly larva, because who knows what else it's killing. Is there flies out here? Yeah, there's some flies. But boy, there'd be a lot more if we didn't have all those birds. If we didn't have, you know, 300 bird houses out here, it would be a totally different situation here. So I'm gonna put up our halfway fence, and I'm gonna show you something here, what we're grazing. I wanna talk to you about something I've learned. Doing this non-selective grazing, I started to get a little greedy this past rotation. Wow, look at all of them, guys. I just can't get over that. Sorry for being getting interrupted, but you can't help but stop and look at that beautiful scenery and know that not only are you feeding your cattle, but you're feeding the birds. Glory to God. But I mean, you can see, you know, we're almost up to my waist here on this beautiful 100% leaf. You know, with my last video, it's almost all 100% leaf. There's no stem in there. It's just a absolute beautiful sort of grass. And boy, look at that cow right there. She's a beaut. Got a little bit of flies on her, nothing extreme. But man, number 33, she's one of my favorites. We got Sid out here, the bull. And there's another bull in here somewhere. He's back over there, I can tell. About 100 head right here, and then we got another 20 in our heifer herd, which we'll go check them out later. Right now, I'm gonna put up this halfway fence. How we graze our cattle is I give them one cell, and I divide it in about a third. So the nighttime move, because they sleep overnight a lot, they don't eat as much as their all-day move. So their all-day move is about 2/3 of this cell, and their overnight move is about a third of this cell. So in the morning, all I gotta do is I gotta come out here and I gotta put up my halfway fence, or take down my halfway fence, which is why it's sitting here, because I took it down this morning. That takes me about 10 minutes to drive out here and do. So the morning time move is really, really easy. People say you're crazy, you move cattle every 12 hours. Well, the morning move takes me 10 minutes. And it gets me out, gets me up, gets me worshiping the Lord. It gets me fired up for the day, and it gets me to get my eyes on my cattle and make sure everything's good to go there. So let's get this halfway fence up. They're ready to move. I've been babbling all afternoon on this camera, so I'm running behind and I gotta get going. We got some flies out here, guys. This year, the flies didn't hit until about 2 weeks ago. And I think that's because it's been fairly cool and wet. We've had a really good year for moisture, and the last two weeks have been hot. That's why you'll see at the front of my paddocks that are up here closest to this woods, they're very beaten up. And actually the day before we got a little shot of rain and they were in tighter, and I gave them a little bit more yet today because I knew it was gonna be hot again today. And I didn't want them to beat it up quite as bad. This isn't really gonna do a whole lot. This is gonna grow back. It won't affect my grazing at all. That will probably affect me my next go around. A lot of people ask about the water in my videos. You've probably seen me drag this little blue tank over here. And the way I do my water is I put it in between the fence so that, couple things. This is the end of the field, or I would have put it on that other side, and then I would only had to move it every other day, right? Because they'd have access to both sides of it. All I got to do is, you know, move that fence just a hair over that way, and I would put the hose facing towards the fence that way. But I've got frost freeze every 300 foot or 400 foot roughly, and I've got a 300 foot hose that I just drag. You know, when we get done at the end of this, I'll grab the end of that hose and I'll run it up to the next frost free, and I'll start working my way that way. This little 35-gallon blue tub that I built a frame for, put a Job Mega Float in there. That works great. I got a nice handle on it there. I can just pick it up and walk it to the next pasture or paddock, and it works extremely well. You see these guys, they've already made their way down, making their way back, and they're just grazing the heck out of this. And then you can see what we're leaving behind. Great ground cover here, all right, but even better manure and urine distribution. It's everywhere you walk. There's just manure everywhere. Remember, I did give them a little bigger paddock last night than normal because I just split what was left of the field here, but they still had great harvest efficiency. You can see the ground is covered. Some areas, you know, we still have 6 inches or so of grass there, but they did a great non-selective graze on this paddock. Here's a perfect example of why non-selective grazing is so great. This is a form of like water grass. I can't think of the real name of it, but it grows in wet areas. It's a really thin grass. They don't like it, and it will get stalky if you let it go for too long. If we were to selectively graze this field, this patch of grass would be really tall and it would get really stalky. It would get really hard, almost like a sage grass. And I think it actually is a form of sage, but it's like a wet growing sage or something. But look at what they've did. They've eaten and trampled. I mean, look at all the flat tips on this one. They've eaten and trampled a lot of this. So that's what we're trying to accomplish out of a non-selective graze, is make them take everything so that they don't overgraze certain things. And then when you come back to your paddocks, boy, you're coming back to something beautiful, let me tell you. All right, well, these cattle are set for the night. There's a brand new heifer that we are going to be, the bull is breeding this year. Not too many flies on her. Her mom is in this herd, so that's one that we've raised up here. Another one just walking across there, that Murray Gray. So we've got some new heifers that we're breeding. So that's it. Morning, I'm gonna take this fence down, and this is just beautiful, guys. I could stay out here all night and listen to the sound of this ripping grass. Look at that beautiful, beautiful calf right there, man. Good golly. That heifer, she's probably gonna stick on this farm. Wow. That'll make your heart hurt, won't it? Seeing that girl. Man. Guys, I think I'm gonna name this title of this video, How to Convince Other Farmers That Regenerative Agriculture is the Way. And it's only gonna be done by getting out here and doing it. And that's why I post these videos. And again, shameless plug to like, share, and subscribe. Let's go do some pig chores. All right, guys, out here at the pig paddocks, and they have not took a full advantage of all these apples. There's still some up here, so I like to give the trees a shake. Look at that, they'll go right after those apples. There's a ton of apple trees in our pig paddocks. If this is your first time watching the videos, you'll know that the area we raise our pigs and the pigs just love them. And this guy, he's got a processing date along with this one right here. And this paddock's pretty tore up. They're gonna be moving out of this paddock tomorrow. And they got some beautiful stuff ahead of them, which I'm gonna show you what their forage looks like ahead of them. Here's another guy that is definitely about pretty darn close to getting ready. And we got another tree here that I can give a shake to, get some treats for him. All right, I've been screwing around. It's getting late. I need to get chores done, and I want to show you our pig paddock setup. So let me get these guys fed, let me get them watered, and I'll give you a quick tour. All right guys, here's the paddock that they just came out of. And what I do on the last day that they are in a paddock is I go out there and I throw a multi-species mix of annual plants. And you can see this is really wet. We got a ton of rain when they were in this paddock, so you can see that it's holding a bunch of water. But tons of apples have fallen since they've came out of here. I had one guy comment, said, hey, you're not gonna let all those apples go to waste, you're gonna go back and get them, right? Probably not at this point, but we got a lot of apples ahead of us. So this right here is you know, 6-7 days rest that this paddock has. Okay, I'm gonna throw a clip of that paddock when they first went in there. You guys can take a look at that right now. Pigs are going after this cover crop. And tomorrow morning I'm going to come out here, I'm going to throw a multi-species mix in there, let them stamp it, peat it in the ground all day, and then in the afternoon I'll move them. Here's 2 paddocks ago. Again, notice there's hundreds of apples around here, and that's mostly oats that are growing back up. But man, look at it. That's a that's a heck of a deal there, what's growing back in that paddock. It's really beautiful to see how that stuff grows back. And you guys, that paddock that they're in right now is officially the beginning of second rotation. So this little fenced in area is 200 by 300. I've got a center laneway that's about 10 foot wide, and each of these posts are a paddock. So when we start our rotations out there, this will be one paddock. As they get as big as they are, I'll give them 2 or 3 of these paddocks, and then I'll leave them in a paddock a little bit longer, because generally that gets towards the end of the year, and it just works out where I can leave them in there, let them tear it up a little bit more than what I would on first rotation. You can see what we're growing here. We've got some radishes and some turnips, some different clovers that were in this mix that I threw out, and that's growing back really, really well. The front of the paddocks you can see are the most tore up because that's where their food and water are. Now here's something interesting. This is a tomato plant, it looks like. Yes, it is a tomato plant. And that's probably because we fed them some table scraps. And look at that, thing's growing. We do not feed any of our pigs any meat scraps. I know they'll eat anything. People say, oh no, you can feed them anything you want. I know you can. We don't. We don't give them meat. We give them, you know, vegetarian diet, essentially, is all that they get. Here is a paddock that they will be into in about 2 or 3 moves, and you can see how well this has grown. This is going gangbusters here. And there's, again, look at that. I don't know if that's a turnip or what that is down there, but that's doing really well. And there's a ton of this sorghum Sudan grass that is growing up. I can't wait for them to get in here because that's going to be some tall stuff. So that's basically our pig operation, guys. That's what we do. We move them. Man, I tell you, I was talking to a guy I ran into at TSC the other day that was buying pig feed, and I knew he was raising, you know, a dozen pigs a year kind of in his backyard or whatever. He has capabilities of doing something similar to this. And, you know, I just, you know, was kind of telling him what I do, you know. I had heard some people that bought some pork from him. They were very happy with it. I said, hey man, I heard you're raising a great product over there, basically raising them on a feedlot. Again, not knocking that. That's what he's doing. This is what I'm doing. But what I tried to emphasize to him is I'm raising double the amount of pigs as he is, and I'm feeding them less. I'm finishing double the amount of pigs with less feed that it's taken him. And last year, we raised basically the same amount of pigs each other, and I fed half the amount of feed. So if that tells you anything. And actually, from what he told me, his hanging weights were, I think our pigs were a little bit bigger than his, but very, very similar size, probably not enough to even really speak about. We've made this setup really easy because we've ran water all the way out here into this woods, you know, from one of our wells out here on the farm. That's what we have, is we have pressurized water on all of our farms. All 160 acres of our home farm here, along with our lease farm that's next to our home farm. And then we have another farm down the road that's about 20 acres. That's all pressurized water now as well. Something we don't mess around with is worrying about water. I've done that, and I'm not going back down that road. So this one frost-free services this whole 2.5 roughly acres for the pigs. So that's a blessing, let me tell you, having good, clean, pressurized water. So that's our setup, guys. Again, approaching other people with grace, wisdom, and gentleness, I think will get you further than, you know, telling them everything they're doing is wrong, because it's not wrong. You know, there's a family behind that farm. There's a family behind the tractor, behind the chemicals, you know, that is generational dependence on that farm and how they're running their operation. So, you know, the best thing I can do is to say, hey, like the guy at TSC, oh yeah, I'm raising pigs too, love them, have a great time with them, this is how we do it. And, you know, maybe that little conversation will spark an interest in them. Check out the channel. See, hey man, I would love to cut my feed bill in half. And we're going to increase these pigs, because this and the sheep are basically very, very little labor. The sheep are about 35 to 40 minutes every 10 days. These guys are about 10 minutes a day, and then you're going to spend, you know, probably about a half hour once a week setting up fences and moving them. So very little time compared to chickens. Chickens has become the most, you know, labor intensive job on the farm, which has got me wondering how much more we're going to do with those, but another conversation for another day. Again, you guys, I appreciate you watching this video. I don't know how I'm going to edit all this in there, because it's probably going to be a fairly lengthy video. I know I've babbled on a ton, and hopefully you're still there and you're not sick of me and have turned this thing off yet. But you know, I hope you can agree with what I've said, and you know, I hope that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stick around for a while. So I appreciate you watching. God bless. Hey guys, forgot one more thing. Last batch of chicks went into the brooder today. This is a half batch, 125. So we have successfully raised pretty close to a couple thousand birds this year.